Welcome to Expert Connections. I'm Julie Holton. Today, let's talk branding. Joining me is Alexis Newman, Senior Strategist at mConnexions. She's the graphic designer and brand expert behind so many of our client projects. Alexis, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I'm so excited to be having this conversation on camera because this is like a peek behind the curtain at the conversations we have all the time about branding and how we work with clients and how to really help them execute on their vision. When you're coming up with a brand, it's really defining their business. It's like bringing definition to their baby, if you will. And so this is a really big process, a really big job. Where do you start?
It's a great question. And it does feel, I think, for a lot of business owners and a lot of entrepreneurs, it feels a little bit overwhelming because there's so much to your business, so much more to your business than just the services that you provide. And that's what I feel like we do really well, is really taking the time to sit down with these business owners and get to know not just, what kind of services do you provide and who's your ideal client, but what is your business's vision? What's your mission? What drives you? Why are you so excited about this service or this product? What makes this endeavor so meaningful to you? And how can we help you communicate those things? And it's not just about having the conversation, but it's also being able to put that in writing and then take all of that inspiration, take all of that behind the scenes information and the story of your business and how you got here and what brought you to this point. And then that's where we start the design process. And that's where we start looking at colors and shapes and images and graphics. But there really is a lot of work that goes in at the very beginning on the front end for us to get to know you and to take that time because that's really important. And it saves us a lot of time moving forward if we can have that sense of your business before we even get started.
Isn't that interesting? I think a lot of people have that idea, that maybe misconception that it's all about colors or only about typography. And really, you're saying it starts with getting to know the business inside and out, getting to know the owner, the key players at the company, if it's a rebranding project, to really know what is going to reflect who that business is back to their audience. What is the process? So you start by getting to know a business. Where does the process take you from there?
When we start this process and we start getting to know the business, one of the things that we really take the time to do is get to know the business separate from the owner, separate from the founder, separate from the entrepreneur. Although there is often a lot of crossover in those two things, I think that's where a lot of people get stuck when they start this process on their own, is they start just looking at, okay, well, what are some colors that I like? Some images that I think are pretty or interesting, but they don't necessarily reflect the business. And I think that's an interesting place for business owners to step into, is to realize that they and their business, although connected, they are two separate entities. And so your business is going to have its own set of visions and values and a differentiator separate from you. So that's step one. That's the very beginning of the process, is figuring out who that business is.
And that's a really great point, by the way, because we have entirely separate processes for coming up with brand identity, and business branding versus the branding for the owner or for the entrepreneur,
Yes.
for the startup founder. They're similar, but I say similar, but they're actually very different. You can have very different outcomes, even though the process itself might be similar.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's the similarities come with the level of intimacy. We really want to get to know the person and the business. Sometimes the person and the business are the same when you're talking about, a public speaker or a life coach or something like that, where the brand is you. And sometimes it's a little bit different when you're talking about more of a service-based industry like, maybe a medical practice or a therapy practice or something where you might potentially be representing a team of people or a group of people. So while the connections are the same and our investment is the same, it's often a very different outcome when you're talking about branding a person versus branding a business.
I'm glad you emphasize that differentiation, because oftentimes, even when a business is first starting out, we encourage the owner to be thinking about where that business is going. Because if your goal is to eventually sell or to be acquired, then you may not want to have too much of your personal identity tied into the identity of the business itself. And the audience may be a big consideration for that brand.
Yeah, that's so true. One of the things that I think we work really hard at is setting a business up with a brand that can grow with them. And so we always want to be thinking that future forward are these colors going to work long term? Is this tagline going to work long term? If your business is here, but you're trying to take it here, is this messaging, is that verbiage, is the spirit behind this logo and this brand and this design going to grow with you? Is it going to be dated? Are we going to have a tagline that's really recognizable, but you know that you want to pivot your services in 6 months to do something different? Is that tagline really going to match? Are we going to be able to expand on it? So all of that thought process, it's not just about where your business is now, but it's about where do you want your business to be 6 months, a year, 5 years from now. We want to set you up with a suite of branded products, a brand identity that's going to grow with you, because then you're going to be able to take it and it's going to be recognizable no matter what stage in your business you're at.
Okay, so here's a question. If I am a new entrepreneur or a startup with a new endeavor, what's the homework I have to do before I come see someone like you? What do I need to know? What do I need to have? Like, what if I'm not into colors or typography, or I don't know these things, or like, do I want to use text for my logo? Do I want an icon or image, or like, what do I need to know and figure out before coming to you?
I was just having this conversation recently that sometimes it can actually be more challenging to put together a logo for someone who has a very specific idea of what they want, because then you're really just trying to see if you can take that vision, that very clear image out of their mind and put it onto paper. Versus we often have clients come to us and say, I don't know if I like images and logos or not. I don't know if I want a scripted font or a serif font, or if I want color or black and white, and that's okay. The only thing that you need to know when you come to us, for me, when we're talking about the branding process, is you need to know your business. You need to know your ideal customer. You need to know your services, and you need to have a strong sense of who your business is. That's it. You don't have to know anything about typography. You don't have to know anything about graphics or colors. You just have to know your business. And you have to communicate that to us, and we will ask questions and we will help guide you along that process. So you also don't have to come with anything written down. We like to have those more personal conversations, where we get to have the one-on-ones. And then from there, that's where we start getting into these things. And that's where you might see, you might think that you really want a text-based logo, but we're going to put together a design that has a graphic and it turns out you love it, or vice versa. And so having that openness and that flexibility and that willingness to look at different things and be open to different concepts, I think is a really important part of it too.
Okay, so if a new client has a mood board, great. If they don't even know what a mood board is, fine. So basically, they just have to have an idea of what their business is, come to you, because even you, I've seen you really work your magic and really start to pull out those layers to create the brand messaging. I mean, there's kind of a science behind this, a science and an art to branding, if you will, because the words matter too, and coming up with that messaging, really pulling out and making those decisions on who you are as a business, what you stand for, your vision, your mission, your values, what differentiates you in the market. All of those things are things that I know you work through with clients even before getting to the design phase of a logo. But I
Yeah.
know that one of the questions that you must get asked all the time is, okay, so how quickly can you get this done? What do those milestones look like? How long do you expect this process to take?
It's a great question. And, probably the answer that people hate to get is, well, it depends. Because it does. It depends on your business. It depends on where you're at in the process. It depends on where you're at with your business. Some businesses come in and they already have a logo, but they don't like it, or they have a little bit of a brand, but it's just not strong enough, or it's a little bit outdated and they want to, bring it up to speed. So that all of those kinds of elements can come into play. I would say generally 6 weeks is a good time frame for us. If you're coming in and you know your business, you know your services, you're ready to hit the ground running. The very first thing, as we've said, several times already, is we're going to have that first conversation. We're going to sit down and we're going to talk. So the conversation is going to be step one. And then from there, we're going to start putting some of those things onto paper. We're going to start developing concepts. We're going to start developing a color palette. We're going to start developing sort of our own version of a mood board to make sure to show the client, to make sure that we have captured in visuals, in words, what they communicated to us during that initial process.
And it's so incredible to see that brand, that vision really come to life. I'm sure the timeline also depends on how hands-on someone wants to be. I know you get clients who they love the first logo that you even show them, and they're off and running with it. So it can be, a timeline that really depends on how detailed, how specific, how much someone even knows. I think it's okay too when people have no idea what they want their brand to look like or feel like, as long as they're willing to go through that process and know that it's going to take a little more time at that point to identify what's going to work for this business and to help the business owner really land on the right place. Alexis, a question that I get asked a lot, especially with startups, is how important is the brand in the early stages of launching a business? And I'm curious your thoughts on this, because I really go both ways. I don't think that a business, a startup especially, I don't think you need to spend a lot of money early on because your business is going to be evolving and you're still growing and figuring out who you are. However, it is very important to still begin establishing your place in the market. And the only way to do that is with a logo and imaging and, starting to build that social media presence, that digital footprint. And you can't do that without establishing who you are. And
Yeah.
so there has to be time and consideration spent on building that, even if you just put a little bit in early on to start developing the concepts, knowing that those concepts will change over time. But what's
Yeah.
your take on this? How much time should really be spent defining that brand before a business is ready to expand and to scale?
That's a great question. And I think for some people who get excited about the branding aspect, they might think, I have a great business idea. Now I need a logo and I need a color palette and I need graphics and all of these things. But as we've already said, the thing that you really need is you need to know your business. You need to know your services. You need to know your ideal client. You need to have a sense of what you see that path forward being, even if we know that path is going to change and it's going to evolve as you actually get into the market and you start, developing your business. But that should come first. Then once you have that established and you're ready to launch, that's where a logo, even if kind of like we said earlier, simple is okay. Simple is good. For some businesses, simple is exactly where it needs to be. And all you need to do is make sure that you have a team supporting you with a design and a brand that can grow with you. So you don't need to have it all figured out from the very beginning. You just need to be able to set up a foundation of a brand that's going to be recognizable and that can evolve as your business evolves, especially if you're looking at branding as one of the early steps in the launch of your business. But once you have that business, your strategy, once you have your services outlined, once you know, your ideal client and you're ready to start putting together a website and all of those things, that's where I see the brand piece coming in. And it can start simple and be something that you build on as you go.
I want to really dissect with you the anatomy, the key elements of a strong brand. And I think the best way to do that is to show some examples. So, can you show us a logo example and talk through some of the key design elements and decisions you made?
Yeah. So one of my favorite examples of logo design that we did is for an obstetrics and gynecology practice in Metro Detroit. So they are called Metro Obstetrics and Gynecology, and they had a logo that they had been using for a long time, and they had some colors that they were using, but they really were starting to feel like it was a little bit outdated. They wanted something refreshed. They wanted something modern and new. So we went ahead and did a logo redesign, and there were a couple of things that went into that. They have a couple of very specific service lines. So as we were talking through colors and identity and the different vision and voice of each of those services, we decided that it made sense to give each one of those their own color within the color palette that we developed for them. And then we also put together a logo that, while they are an obstetrics and gynecology clinic primarily, so they mostly service women.
And in fact, that's one of the really unique aspects of this particular business. I mean, on the surface level, to those who aren't in the industry in healthcare, you might think, okay, well, a dime a dozen, right? Like a lot of doctors out there. What we found that really makes this practice unique is that they've been caring for generation after generation after generation of women. And so in some cases, we'll have, from grandmother to daughter to, great great granddaughter, of women that come into this practice, very family driven, family focused. And so, like you said, very focused on women, of course, and their health. But also they wanted that, something that really kind of speaks to all generations.
Yeah. And you'll notice one of the things that we did is, despite the fact that this is a woman focused practice, we did not throw a bunch of pink on this logo. That was the last thing we wanted to do. We really wanted to make this kind of timeless and classic because, as you said, they treat generations of women. So we used a really beautiful, soft blue color, which is also a great color for medical practices, for medicine in general. And then in order to bring in a little bit of that femininity, because this is a practice for women, we used a really beautiful cursive scripted font. And the other thing that we did with this logo was we really wanted to make sure that they were able to use it on social media. They have a very strong social media presence. And so you'll notice when you look at the logo, the M is highlighted. And that was part of their old logo. They had kind of used that M as their signature element on social media and as a smaller icon version of their logo. And so we wanted to give them something that just took what they were using and brought it forward and brought it more modern and more elegant. And so we created this logo with that in mind. And I think that that's an important component to remember too. Sometimes people will have logos that are really beautiful, but they are huge. They're either really long or they're really tall. And when you're trying to figure out, how do I put this in a little social media icon, or how do I make this a little bit smaller so that I can use it on maybe some digital messaging, or, it's always really nice to have a smaller version of your logo. And so that's a consideration too, is you want to be putting together a design that you can take and you can keep the recognizable elements. So that M and that blue color is so recognizable. Once you know Metro, you see that M, you know that that's theirs. And so you can recognize them with just the M, or you can recognize them with the full logo. And I think that that's something that we take really seriously, is making sure that you have a recognizable suite of logos to use no matter where you want to put them, digital or print.
It's really important. I know we oftentimes, unfortunately, will get clients who come to us when they realize their logo just is not usable in the format that they have. They can't print it on swag. They can't put it, maybe it was designed for letterhead and now it doesn't work on social media. It doesn't fit into that circle or the small square. And so that's a really important consideration I know that you have at the very beginning of a project. Where is this logo going to be used? How do you intend, how do you see this playing out? And what are your intentions with using this logo? Okay, you have another example for us. What's the next one?
Yeah, so the next one is for an animal assisted therapy farm. It's called Fields for Growth. And this logo is a little bit, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit more fun because of the animal component. So one of the things that our client really wanted was to highlight, Fields for Growth already sort of tells you a little bit about this business, but she really wanted to highlight the animal component that they work, it is animal assisted therapy, and she wanted to bring some of that softness into the logo. So we used a graphic design to bring the horse as part of the logo itself. So instead of having something where you just got an image of a horse or a graphic right there next to it, we wanted to make sure that we highlighted the interconnectivity of the animals in the therapy and what you're going to get when you go to this practice. And again, that horse head is kind of the recognizable component that you can pull out if you need to use it on social media or you need to print it on something where a lot of times we'll see logos that are very text heavy, have a really long tagline, or the name is really long. And like you said, those are really hard logos to print on swag or certain types of printed materials. So always wanting to be cognizant of that. And then with the brand palette that we put together for this Fields of Growth logo, we actually kept the logo in just black and white because we know that the graphics and the images that come from this client, that come from the farm and animals, are already so vibrant and so colorful that we don't need the logo to take away from that. The logo is just going to support those things. So the client can use it in black, the client can use it in white. Then we put a really beautiful soft color palette together with greens and blues and browns that are really representative of that farm environment and the calmness and the healingness that you get when you visit this practice. So that was one of the ones that we did recently, and is one of my favorites because we don't get to incorporate animals into our logos that often. So it was a fun exercise for me.
Well, I love how the colors have significance, and in every action and decision you've described had a very deliberate, intention behind it. Everything has a purpose and a place as you're pulling together the messaging into the logo. All right, Alexis, a question I know that we get asked all the time is, why hire a designer? Why hire a person to really work on this with you when there are so many tools out there, especially with AI? We have a whole segment of this show on AI, and it's not lost on us that there are a lot of marketing and branding graphic design tools being developed through AI, not quite at the level of replacing people. But we have no doubt that it's going in that direction. So when someone's looking to create a logo, they're looking to create their brand messaging. Where does the value come from in working with an expert?
It's a great question. And it's definitely one that we hear a lot, especially with tools, like you said, AI tools like Canva. Canva is a great example. Virtually anyone with very little design experience can go on Canva. They have pre-designed logos and you can just pick one, change the text, change the color, and bam, there you go.
Well, and remember when Canva first came out, Canva was like, for those of us who have graphic design backgrounds and we have the Adobe Photoshop and the whole Adobe suite of products, it was like, Canva, what's this thing that, like, it can't do what Photoshop does? And at the time it couldn't, but it did start to give people who aren't graphic designers the ability to design and to create, which is always amazing. And then it has evolved over time to becoming, would it be safe to say, one of our favorite tools, in addition to the Adobe suite of products? But really, and Canva started using AI without even telling us it was using AI. The background, one-click background remover, that's AI. And a lot of people don't even realize that they're using AI tools in their design work. And you're right, people can just like couple clicks, boom, logo.
Yeah.
But that is lacking everything you've described in this interview up until now. So where's the value there? What's missing when you don't have that attention to detail from someone like you?
Yeah, well, I'd like to think of, so here's an analogy that I will share that I think is a great kind of step-by-step look at doing it yourself versus all the way up to actually hiring an agency and a team of experts to help you through the process. So if you go on, I'll say Amazon, You go on Amazon and you're looking for an item of clothing and you buy something and it's one size fits all. It it might fit okay. It might not fit at all. It's hard to tell. That to me is a little bit the Canva side. That's the AI side. You're going to have something and it's probably going to be fine-ish. It's not going to be great. It's not going to stand out. I'll tell you, most people can tell designs that come from Canva. You can see if this is a custom design or if you are using a pre-made template. So that to me is the one size fits all. Then you can take it a step further and you can maybe order a shirt in your size from, Amazon or wherever. And it might actually fit a little bit better. Maybe you can, throw a belt on it or, tuck it in. That to me is where you get into, okay, I'm just going to hire a freelancer for, a really low rate, and I'm going to send them the name of my business and I'm going to send them a couple colors I like, and they're going to put something together for me and I'm going to take it and run with it. So it's going to fit better, most likely, than a template that you just grabbed and tried to change a couple of colors and add, the name of your business. But it's still for me just going to be surface level. Then we have working with an agency and working with a team that's actually going to walk you through that process. That to me is buying a shirt from a store that you know and love, where fits your size fits, and taking it to a tailor and having it custom fit to you, to your body. We are custom fitting a logo to your business, to your brand. We are working with you to create something that is only ever going to fit you. It's not going to fit anybody else. And people can really tell the difference. You can see when you look at when you look at images that people post on social media, you can tell if they're made with Canva, you can tell if they're custom design, or you can tell if maybe they're using a little bit of both. And so that's where I think the magic happens, is there are a wide variety of options, but when you have something that's created just for you and just for your business, it speaks for your business. And it says volumes about your level of investment in your business and your commitment to the services, to your customer, to the experience that they're going to have when you put something together that was made just for them.
You're so right. Your brand, your logo defines your business. Alexis, this has been incredible. I think, one other point that's really important to make, we have a link to another episode of Expert Connections talking about trademarks, talking about copyrights. These are really important considerations that Canva can't help you with, or any other DIY platform, depending on what freelancer you might hire. They can't help you with it either. But this is very important when making sure that you are protecting your intellectual property, whether it be the branding you create, the tagline you create, the logo you create, and also, especially for those that are just starting out, making sure that you're not infringing on someone else's copyright or trademark, because that can really come back unnecessarily to hurt you in the long run. Alexis, thank you so much for being on the show today and for showing some of these designs. I always love seeing the inner working of how your brain puts these logos together.
Of course, this was amazing. And if you couldn't tell, I know you know this already, but for anyone watching, this is something that I just get so excited about. And it's really one of my passions, is to work with people who are excited about their business and ready to put that best foot forward and just need a little bit of help to get there. So it was wonderful to come on and talk about this process with you. And I'm excited for the next time that we get to work on one of these projects.
Yeah, if you want to geek out over design with Alexis, check out more of our marketing connections segments here on Expert Connections. Alexis, thanks for being on the show. Thank you to those of you who tuned in. We will see you next time.